Not one, not two, not three, not four, not five, not six, but 7 fountain hooks in a single game. Dude, 2013 Dendi was an absolute beast. The International 3 is arguably one of the greatest tournaments not only in Dota 2 history, but perhaps in all of esports. Among many moments that came up from that tournament, it features 3 straight up iconic ones. The 3rd edition of Dota 2's de facto world championship saw Bulba sprinting out of Team Liquid's booth to celebrate becoming the first North American team to get into the top 8 of an international. It featured the incredibly close, tense, and spectacular best of 5 grand final between Na'Vi and Alliance. And the Fountain Hook game. The game that exemplifies everything great about Dota. The game that proved that Dota would be around forever, even as other esports titles fell into obscurity. Why was this so incredible? It's pretty simple actually. Using 2 Dota characters, or in the nomenclature of the game, heroes, in a way that was not intentionally made by the developers, 2 Na'Vi players turned an entire match, an entire series around, cementing one of the greatest comebacks of all time in any competition. It also set off a firestorm in the community about what constitutes cheating in Dota 2. In short, the Fountain Hook changed Dota 2 forever. Now, before we keep diving in, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button for more esports content here at VENN Esports. Thanks. Let's start by taking a look at the teams involved. This is Game 3 of the upper bracket semifinals at the International 2013. At one end of the digital field, we've got the ever-powerful Na'Vi, the top seed out of Group A. On the other side, the Chinese team Tong Fu, who despite up and down results during the group stages, seem to have figured it out here in the knockout stage. Pulling even further back though, this is the latest skirmish in the long-standing rivalry between the Chinese and the Eastern European teams. Na'Vi, representing Europe, won the 2011 inaugural International in a huge upset that shocked the Dota world, while in 2012, Tong Fu's countrymen Invictus Gaming take home the crown for China. In short, whichever team wins here will score another point in the Great Dota War. Now, there's one guy I want you to keep a keen eye on, and that's Dendi, the wonder kid mid laner for Na'Vi. Now, at this point in history, Dendi's already a legend. He's iconic for pulling out Enigma, a character that he had quite literally never played before in the grand finals of the very first International and winning on it. At the International 2012, he was the man who pulled off the feat that can only be referred to as the play. I'd explain it, but it's just way more fun to just watch it.
Waiting in the wing, Na'Vi's about to be caught. Oh, there's the sleep, the surge, he catches everyone. Oh, this could be a total disaster. Vacuum in, Ravage on everyone. The black hole as well, Light of Heaven turns it around. Ravage as well, stolen by Dendi. Are you kidding me? They turn it around. 4 heroes dead, 4
heroes dead, Chuan trying to survive. Chuan's gonna go down. Puppey talked about the Naga counter. It's Light of Heaven with his BKB. They turn it around. I don't even know how they're gonna do it. Standing ovation from the crowd.
Watch the scream from Dendi, the roar from the crowd. Point is, Dendi's a legend. And he's also one of the goofiest dudes in all of esports. Look at that goofy hair, a goofy smile, he's just goofy. Dendi is a huge part of why Na'Vi is the beloved team in the West. His personality, his skilled play, and his willingness to try out anything made him an iconic figure in the early days of Dota 2 and made Na'Vi the team to root for. His partner in crime in this particular escapade is the captain of Na'Vi, Puppey, largely considered to have one of the greatest minds in Dota history. He's the one that made the call to put Dendi on Enigma in the first place back in the first International. This call couldn't have come from any other duo. Dendi's complete let's give it a shot mentality in combination with Puppey's brilliant mind couldn't have resulted in anything else other than utter brilliance. And in this case, what came from it was the Fountain Hook game. Now, listen, I know a lot of people watching have a pretty solid understanding of Dota 2's history, but for those that don't, the context of where the game came from is pretty important to the story. Dota 2 is a remake of a mod, or a fan-made modification, that was originally made from the bones of a game called Warcraft 3, which was developed by Blizzard Entertainment. And because that mod was designed by fans, it had a tendency to be a little janky in parts, and more accurately, just broken. Tastes like Dota. After it gained immense popularity though, a little company called Valve, you may have heard of them, wanted to make their own version. And by make their own version, I mean hire the person that's currently running the mod and copy it almost exactly one-to-one. Now, that means some of the weird quirks that came with the original mod that was janky came over to Valve's version of the polished game. Some things like monsters not spawning if there's something in the way, allowing for huge stacks of mobs to be formed by pulling their previous clones out of the way. Or the very concept of denying, aka murdering your own little dudes so that the opponent doesn't get to murder them and then get money for it. Or, you know, the fountain hook thingy that we're talking about. Okay, we've been dancing around this fountain hook term for a little while, but what exactly is a fountain hook? Well, it's fairly simple. Pudge is a hero in Dota who can throw out a large hook and upon hitting an enemy, pulls them towards him. Very Mortal Kombat, get over here style. That's Scorpion, for those of you that don't play Mortal Kombat. Chen is a hero who, at that time, had an ability that could teleport a teammate back to base after a short delay. And anyone that enters the base of the opposing team, or fountain, whatever terminology you want to use, is more often than not dealt damage that led to death. You see where I'm going with this? Basically, Pudge would fire off his hook just a moment before being teleported back to base from Chen. If the hook landed, it would drag the enemy all the way across the fountain, across the map, crossing everything, killing them instantly, and looking stupid to boot. Now, to pull off the fountain hook, teammates had to be in perfect sync. And thanks to the delay in Chen's teleportation spell, that becomes incredibly difficult. And if you don't pull it off, then Pudge is just, you know, sort of there, away from the fight, until he waddles his way back. Now, this isn't something that the developers intended to happen in Dota 2, but this was pure creativity on the part of Na'Vi. And it worked. And it nearly broke the scene in half in the aftermath. Okay, finally, we're here. Game 3 of the winners bracket semifinals in 2013. Na'Vi versus Tongfu, and the loser drops to the losers bracket where they play last year's champion Invictus Gaming for their tournament lives. The stakes almost couldn't be higher, and Na'Vi is on the ropes. Tongfu is very, very far ahead in this exact moment, and Dendi and his squad know that they have to pull off something crazy to save their fate. So why the hell not? Throw out the hook, see where it lands.
Still hasn't even been used. There's a hook. How? Brought all the way back to the base. Cleaned up by the fountain.
And it landed. And it landed. And it landed again, and again, and again, and again, and again. Was that 7 agains? I think that was 7 agains. You get the point. The duo saw the path to victory and hooked it all the way home. I'm proud of that. The tournament's live crowd in Seattle's Benaroya Hall went absolutely wild. Dota's a game all about creativity and using every trick in the book to squeeze out wins. But the fountain hook game is on another level. It's so unique, so interesting, so unlike anything else you'd see in any other game that pulling it off once in a game at this competitive level would immediately make it a fan favorite. Dendi and co. pulled it off 7 times. 7! Put simply, this is one of the greatest feats in any esport, one that will live on in the minds of every Dota 2 fan and any person that had ever seen it ever. It's also the moment that cemented Dendi, Puppey, and Na'Vi as a whole as some of the most beloved figures in all of esports. They pulled off a magical feat at the highest levels of competition and will always be remembered for it. Alright, but not everyone remembers it so fondly. Immediately after the match ended, Reddit, Twitter, and even the back rooms of the Benaroya Hall at the tournament exploded with conversations about whether the play should be allowed to stand, if the game should be replayed, or even worse, if Na'Vi should be disqualified using a strategy that was so clearly not intended by the game's developers. Was the fountain hook cheating? Well, on one hand, the trick was well known among the community, and Valve neglected to fix it before the tournament up until that point, so why wouldn't they be allowed to use it? But on the other hand, there was almost no chance Na'Vi would have won the game without the trick, or glitch, or combo, or however you look on it based on how you feel. Now, if they played straight up Dota from that point on, with that big of a deficit, they would have almost certainly lost. And yet, after deliberation for tournament organizers, the game was allowed to stand. Loda, star and captain of Alliance, the team that eventually would beat Na'Vi in the grand finals, was particularly outspoken about the play.
I was very angry watching the game.
You need to get them to remove that from the game. That was the biggest joke I've ever seen. How can it even be allowed to win that way? Tom Fu had that game. Is that balance? You hook a guy with Aegis? It should be... Oh my f***ing god.
I'm still a bit salty about it, I think.
To be fair to the members of Tong Fu, they accepted the loss with grace and continued to fight for the rest of the tournament. But Navi's Puppey said it best. But that's Dota, baby! The fountain hook was nearly impossible to pull off, but when executed properly, was far and away one of the best improvisations a team could whip out. And despite protests, Valve allowed it. The fountain hook game happened in one of the most historically significant matches in series in the game's long history, and Valve allowed it. Here's the thing. Some people may scream and cry about competitive integrity or fairness or whatever, but plays like these are what make Dota 2 beautiful. While most games played at the highest level are about bending the rules to eke out the smallest advantages, Dota 2 is a game about snapping those rules in half and using those two halves to pummel your opponent into submission. Now, sure, the fountain hook was patched out very quickly after that, but for that brief moment, Dendi and Puppey were allowed to wield it, like Thor's magical hammer Mjolnir, attached to another, even bigger hammer that was then attached and stapled to a bigger sword. It was ridiculous. And you know what? That's what makes Dota 2 the beautiful game. Subscribe, look at all these cool things we have. They're right here. My producer said I have to do this.